Thank you. Can you guys all hear me? I don't know how many of you do like public speaking, but the worst thing is when like 1,000 things happen before you speak and you're just in the back like sweating and waiting for this to happen. But I want to say thank you to Colin and everybody who brought me here, and especially to Tanya. I'm doing this project, and I will talk about the project, but Tanya has been instrumental in making this happen. I'm actually staying in her house right now. And so yeah, thank you. I was about to make a joke about walking around her house naked when she was away with her husband. But I will not make that joke. So I want to talk about the project that I'm doing, and it's basically I am selling hot chicken, or my version of hot chicken, and we are trying to sell the chicken for an outrageous sum, and the surplus that we make, we are using that to purchase property, which is being transferred back to the community. The neighborhood that we're working in is North Nashville, a particular census tract, a particular census block group. So Census Tract 143, Census Block Group 1. And that neighborhood is historically black. It's still black because those two things don't always go together. And it is facing gentrification pressures like a lot of places in Nashville. I guess the problem, right, of gentrification is outrageous. So they say like in 7 years, the deficit for affordable housing in Nashville is going to be 33,000 units. And affordable housing is technically folks who make 0 to 30% or 0 to 60% of the median household income. There's also a deficit in market rate housing, about 20,000 units. But that's fine, because those folks can afford it. They can afford the inconvenience of driving a longer distance. And I don't mean to be dismissive about those people's challenges, but I just mean to highlight, I think, what is the more important reality. So that's the project. And we are nowhere near our goal. So I want to talk about why I'm doing that. And I think the title for this is community, right? And I think generally, right, when we think about community, we think about a place that is already formed, a group of people who live together. I was talking to Tanya yesterday, and I was telling her about something that I heard, that somebody said that folks are always concerned with where they go when they die, but fewer folks think about where they were before they were born. And that to me is sort of our preoccupation with how things start. Or sorry, our lack of thinking about how things start, right? So when we think about community, we rarely think about how it starts. I will present to you my idea of how community starts. We are all driven by our self-interest, right? And this sort of this self-interest is in conflict with other folks. And the sort of like competition between my self-interest and your self-interest creates wars, creates fights, and the purpose or the consequence of these wars and fights are that we begin to purge places of folks who don't share the same perspectives that we have. And so at the end of a war, or at the end of a fight, and this could be a metaphorical fight or a real fight, we have a group of people who are like-minded, generally, who have the same interests, generally. So by the time we start talking about community, we have carefully and smartly avoided how we got there, which is through, in my mind, war. And this is true, right? Like if America is a community, how America was formed was through that, right? And so community is, by my definition, exclusionary. And it is dispossessive if it has to be. We can think of America, we can think of Nashville. We can think of this room, the folks who are here. Like, this is a community of folks. The saying that birds of a feather flock together. Before those same feathered birds flocked together, best believe that there were some other birds that would kick the fuck out. They were like, y'all can't fly around with us because you guys don't have the right plume or whatever. So that is the context in my mind of like community as a process, the process of developing a community. But then there's a community as a place, right? So this war doesn't end because we have a community. In fact, because of who we are, our self-interest, and then because of the economic system that we have chosen and that we participate in, the jockeying of resources still happens, right? And so our communities are generally characterized by this sort of second war, this fight for resources. And we fight for resources so that we can be comfortable, so that we can be comfortable, so that our kids can be comfortable. And the way, unfortunately, that this comfort is developed or generated is through exploitation. And we take what we want, we take what we think that we need, and we create this hierarchy of people that, again, we're still in community, but we have a different agenda, so to speak. We're kind of still out for ourselves. And so, which is, I understand, a very cynical position, but I think it's a necessary position. I think that very often we are comfortable thinking of ourselves as protagonists in a story, right? That we are the hero and that we're all good people. But somehow, with this like collection of good people in this room, collection of good people in Nashville, in Tennessee, in America, in the world, we still have all this fucked up shit, So how is it that good people can conspire to create some fucked up shit? It's because we're in fact not good people, And by that I mean that instead of trying to put ourselves in other people's shoes, I think it's best to just stay where we are and examine our own shoes and maybe accept some villainy, as part of the makeup of who we are and who our communities are. And so the alternative vision of community that I want to present is equally cynical. But I think it's maybe less destructive than the one that exists, which is based on self-interest. Generally, we sort of understand our connection to individuals and to the wider public as one of responsibility. And by that I mean, if you're in a position of privilege, and whether it's financial, educational, gender, whatever, you sort of think that it's your responsibility to be kind. It's your responsibility to be thoughtful. But I think that if we take a step back and we understand that because of the complicated world that we have created, that this responsibility, which again, going back to my first point, isn't concerned with the origins of the problem. If we examine the origins, we'll see that we are not responsible because we're privileged. We're responsible because we are culpable. And that each person has, to varying degrees, a certain level of complicity in the system that oppresses folks, right? And there is a writer who talks about individuals being bifurcated. And he says that we see ourselves as consumers and we see ourselves as producers, but we don't see ourselves as whole. And so we can do some fucked up shit on the production side, but not understand that we are eventually going to consume the stuff that is produced. Or we can do some fucked up shit on the consumption side and not understand that it's going to affect the folks who produce, which is us. So if there is complicity, and then there is possibly, and that complicity is connected to our responsibility, then we are each impelled to act, right? We have to all do something. And going back to the project, why I'm here in Nashville, going back to affordable housing. Everybody, like if you choose to purchase a home, in a city that is changing demographically and economically, you are part of the problem. That's just the way it is, Like we all have a footprint, and that footprint has consequences. And so the reason why I sort of started this project was to, showcase two things. Showcase the absurdity of what this reality is, that the fact that folks who want to have housing can't. And I'm trying to match that absurdity with the absurdity of trying to sell chicken for $50,000. The other reason is that, to my point, is like we are all complicit. And so I'm not trying to sell chicken for $50,000 to everybody. I have different tiers because I'm smart. There's a tier where you can pay $100, then you can pay $500. And sort of like this scale of payment reflects crudely the spectrum of responsibility. And so I think that it is important to, come to places like this and to say things as have been said, and to listen to things that have been said, and then to go away and do nothing, That's cool. It is also cool to maybe begin to act more critically. There was somebody, I was reading the thing on the back, and somebody wrote that wealth is about personal responsibility or some shit like that, like no victim mentality, right? I think that if we consider honestly how we are organized socially, economically, we will see that in fact we're all victims, some more than others. And we all profit to a certain degree from the problem, some more than other people. And the problem that we have has never been about resources, if we have enough. At least not in our lifetimes. The problem has been about the way the resources are distributed. And community is just that. Community is the uneven distribution of resources. And politics is the way we navigate that. And even before we get to community, it is the uneven distribution of those spoils to create that community. And if there's anything that I want you guys to leave here with, is that we are all complicit, and we all have a responsibility that should be commensurate with that complicity. And we should then take action based on that. So if there are folks here who can afford to contribute an entire home for a piece of chicken, I'm collecting. Thank you.